Bagseed Chronicles is a podcast about
growing mushrooms would be a very sustainable and easy way to keep food on the table because you can grow it with very minimal light,
right,
very limited resources, and your source product is never ending.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Bagseed Chronicles. I am your indomitable host, Uncle Dig, and today I have a wonderful show for you, including part 2 of the interview I had with Higher Peaks from the Oregon Rooted podcast, where he describes, allegedly, how to cultivate mushrooms. I will not include a garden update today other than to say everyone who was alive last week is alive this week. Please enjoy this interview. Well, and speaking of Oregon Rooted and your podcast and everything, and I understand your podcast is not just about cannabis, but it's also about psychedelics and psychedelic culture and psychedelic medicine in general. And you're starting, you just started a new season. I wrote these questions a while ago. We've had some scheduling issues. You just started a new season, huh? And I'm looking, I've been listening to it. I heard your first episode, Curious About Cannabis. It was great. Could you tell us a little bit about the Dirt Show, Oregon Rooted, in the past and what you have coming up now that you're back on and publishing?
Right. So with that episode that I just put out with Curious, basically it kind of explained what happened.
Yeah, it did.
So we had a 3-year layover that kind of just... we got beat down. We lost the studio, COVID and friggin' fires. So we've been trying to recover from that, personally and then professionally. So I finally got everything back up. The website's up. We released an episode. We're back on. I said this new season because what the fuck do you call it, man? Like
I'm on season 3. I just change it every year, every anniversary around there. I just change it to the new season.
So I appreciate people listening, but yeah, we just finally be able to fully recover from it. But yeah, so we're releasing new episodes now. We're going to release them weekly. We just did one together for the Dirt Show with you on it. So
I'm really excited about that.
That was awesome, and we're going to have some other great guests. Some regulars that we've had in the past. I've got a JD Short interview that'll be coming out this month.
Yeah, exciting.
I've had fucking people beg me about that shit. Always about that. Anyway, so I'll bring one of those
specifically about JD Short.
Everybody likes JD.
Well, he sounds like a nice guy, so that's good.
Yeah, so that, but I'm also going to bring out a bunch of new stuff. I'm bringing out some other breeders, some big breeders that people will be liking, and I'm also, because we're, when we first started, we were a cannabis culture for Oregon, and we've brought that out. But Oregon is kind of leading the way when it comes to these psychoactive drugs. I mean, we've now decriminalized personal use for all drugs, but we're leading now in, psychedelics for therapy, and then cannabis obviously is already rec. So we're doing a lot of things here. And so we rebranded and kind of are going towards the psychoactive culture, which I think embodies all of it. I'm starting to call it Oregon Sober now because
right, Oregon Sober.
Like we're all kind of doing cannabis and mushrooms. So, but we're going that way because there's a lot of good things about psychedelics along with cannabis that are medicine, man. I'm just going to break it down.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say you can't use things in wrong ways or too much of, but yeah, I think that there's a lot of benefits that can be had of psychedelics used in the right way, and we want to kind of try to share that culture with people and share another aspect of growing. Like this is another hobby or something that you can do that you can provide your own self with some personal medication if it works for you.
Okay.
And enjoy a little bit of a grow. So, I actually like growing mushrooms in the winter, especially because it's a great winter activity, and a lot of people can't grow cannabis in the winter.
Right, yeah.
So it's a good alternate hobby, if you will.
How long have you been growing them?
About a year.
About a year. Okay, so
can I just say this real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I just want to put a disclaimer out here.
Okay, great.
So all this information surrounding mushrooms is for entertainment purposes only, for research and information. Okay. It's all hypothetical and all hearsay. It's for entertainment. Take it with a grain of salt.
Yes.
And I also would advise you to check your local and state laws, as I do not condone any illegal activity at all.
Okay. Yeah. So we've got
regardless of what I do.
Okay. Yeah. You know.
All right. Here we go.
Geese gander. Let's go. Okay. So if a person was interested in growing mushrooms, or even if they were just curious about the process, could you take us through like a standard psychedelic mushroom grow?
Yeah.
Like, so you have a spore, right?
So the way you can start is from spore. Well, there's two ways you can start.
Okay.
But the legal way to start is to get spores.
Okay.
So spore vendors online. There's several that are reputable, and it is legal in most states. I believe Georgia has an issue, and I think California used to have an issue, but I think that's changed now.
Okay.
So I believe pretty much every state, it's legal to source and get spores for research purposes. Okay. So that's okay to do. If you start that way, it's good. But I'll tell you, it's a hard way to start, and it's like a 50-50 shot. You're probably not going to be successful, or if you know what I mean. It's a tough way to start.
So that's more of a gamble than a cannabis seed for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
especially without any skills developed yet. So starting from spore is hard. What you can do is, if you got time on your side, which hopefully you do, is take that spore and basically spawn that out into mycelium.
Okay.
So let it essentially germinate like you would a seed. That turns into mycelium, and once it's in mycelium form, then your odds of a successful run is much higher.
So these are parts of people call them mushrooms, but a mushroom is just a fruiting body that erupts from mycelium.
Right. Mycelium is the actual thing. That's the actual living body. It's so the mycelium is like a tree.
Okay.
Let's talk about an apple tree. The mycelium is the tree. The mushroom is the apple.
Right.
Okay. So the actual living body, what you're actually messing with and growing, is a mycelium. The fruiting body is just its last ditch effort to reproduce itself.
Okay. Gotcha.
Okay. Which just happens to be the benefits to us is that part.
Right.
So, but what you can do is you can take that spore syringe. It's usually a syringe or a print or a swab. Those are just mediums. A syringe is just, sterile water with spores.
Okay.
A swab is just like a sterile Q-tip with spores on it.
Okay.
And then you've got prints, which are like a piece of paper or a piece of foil that has a full print on it.
Okay.
You can take that, and there's two ways you can go to mycelium. You can go to an auger plate, or you can go to liquid culture. Now, liquid culture, you can see right up there. That jar there. Okay, so liquid culture is just a nutrient solution. Like it's usually like a malt extract solution.
Okay.
With sterile water. And then you can take those spores and inject that into a sterile jar, and that will produce mycelium. Okay, in that liquid. That's called liquid culture. That's one way to start, and it's a good way to start in the sense that you're spawning that out into a bunch of liquids so that you're going to have an endless amount of...
Oh, my...
Because you need a pinhead size of mycelium to grow anything.
So you're like, you've almost got like in this liquid culture, you have a continuous supply of this mycelium constantly growing, and then you're just, it's like a sourdough starter.
Essentially.
I mean, not exactly.
Essentially, but as you run out of liquid, you're going to have to transfer a little bit of mycelium into more liquid so that it has more food.
Okay.
But yeah, it's like a start. Once you have that starter, you can keep seeding more and more. Yeah. And so once you have any genetic of mushrooms, you just keep it in your cabinet, your file, so to speak, and dude, you can have it forever.
And that...
without ever buying it again.
And that sounds less difficult than keeping a cannabis clone around forever.
Well, right. Mothering a plant, yeah, that's tough. Because I can keep, again, mycelium, I only need a little speck, so I can have a slant, like a test tube slant.
Right, okay.
Full of full of agar.
Okay.
And I can have a little piece of that mycelium, and I can shove it in the fridge, and I can have an endless supply of mushrooms for the rest of my life.
That is so cool.
So to have a mushroom bank, which I don't understand people when it comes to this, mushrooms are one of the most highest content of fiber, protein, and nutrition in a vegetable-based product. I can't believe people aren't. If the world fell apart tomorrow, growing mushrooms would be a very sustainable and easy way to keep food on the table because you can grow it with very minimal light,
Right.
very limited resources, and your source product is never ending. You just keep growing it out.
Assuming you have refrigeration.
No, you don't need refrigeration
Okay.
unless you want to store a sample.
Oh, like just keep
for
that
a
on
long
ice.
time.
Like you're like, I don't want to work with this anymore, but I want to
if
save
you
it.
want to keep growing out chunks, I
Okay.
can take a transfer every 3 months and just keep growing it and nothing but out on the table.
That's so cool. See, science is so cool.
So once you're into the liquid culture, the other
Okay.
option is instead of liquid culture, if you want to work a genetic line, meaning like you would cannabis, you want to find certain traits, you want to isolate certain properties, you want to make your own strain, if you will. What you can do is take those spores and spawn them onto agar plates, petri dishes.
Right.
Okay. And they'll spawn out, and then you can start ice each, and I can show you how to see each pheno on a plate.
Okay.
But you'll see all the phenos on your plate, and then you can start growing, taking transfers out of that, putting it further on in the process, and isolating certain traits that way. So you got two choices, liquid culture or agar plates, that you can take that spore to mycelium. Now, once you get to mycelium stage on either one, the next process is to go to grain.
Okay, and that's where you're talking about a medium where it's going to finish, right?
Right. So the reason you go to grain is because all mushrooms, pretty much all mushrooms across the board need a high nitrogen food source.
Okay.
Okay. The nice thing about mushrooms, though, is they don't require any kind of special pHing. They don't require any kind of you can have a ton of nitrogen or a ton of a certain nutrient. It's not going to burn it. It's not going to hurt it. You know what I mean? So very resilient. So grain provides a high nitrogen source for the mushrooms. So what you do is you go from your LC or your agar to the grain. You spawn that out and fill that whole grain up to where it's all spawn.
All pregnant with mycelium, right?
Yeah,
Like
just
full.
all white. And you want
Okay.
every grain in there covered.
Okay.
Because up until this process, you have to stay completely sterile. This is the hard part.
The hard part is the sterility.
Yeah. So if you can make it all the way through the grain stage sterile, you're home free almost. You're almost there.
All of that, all of this we've just described has to be completely sterile.
Yeah. Anytime you get
happens if
one drop of a spore from trichoderma, which is a cannabis's friend,
Right.
if you get one spore of black mold, brown mold,
Because you've made a
anything
perfect environment.
you have to.
And so if it's not sterile, anything else that's more aggressive is going to take over.
Correct.
Holy shit. Okay, wow.
Now,
So
most other things generally are more aggressive. Now, that's not always true, but most things, especially trichoderma, it'll just it'll eat from the center right out and just destroy it. Wow. But don't get me wrong, I've got some ape spawn that, dude, it'll fucking eat trichoderma for lunch, dude. It'll just what it does is it grows up over it and then it suffocates it.
it's ape
insane.
spawn? What is it another kind of
It's albino penis envy.
Okay.
It's a well-known psychedelic.
Yeah.
Anyway, strong. It's a very strong. Anyway, it doesn't kill it necessarily, but it's able to work with it.
Okay, cool.
Not that I do that, but
survive
it can. Yeah. Anyway, aside from that, so once you make the grain spawn complete, then you go straight to your substrate. They call it substrate. They call it substrate because really it's generally soil, but you can use all kinds of mediums. You can use vermiculite, you can use cocoa, you can use manure.
Okay.
You can use not all cubes, but like your gourmets and your functional mushrooms like wood. So those are wood lovers.
Okay.
In general, in nature, you've got wood lovers and you got dung lovers.
Right.
Okay. Dung lovers can go on to CBG and vermiculite just fine. Wood lovers tend to just want to be with wood.
Okay.
So with some exceptions, but so once you go from grain into your sub, which in my case I use CVG, which is cocoa, vermiculite, gypsum.
Okay, that's what that stands for. Okay,
Yep.
cool.
And what that is a field capacity amount, watered down amount of CVG that I then put that grain in. That is not a sterile process.
Right.
Once you go into that substrate, the one thing about cocoa is it doesn't have nutrition.
Right.
So it doesn't necessarily harbor like fungus and molds.
Okay.
Which is nice. And then also gypsum is really off the scale on pH essentially. So it's not a breeding ground for like trichoderma, because trichoderma needs a more narrow range of pH.
Oh, okay.
So you add that gypsum in, one for a little bit of mineral substance, but also to keep things loose and dry a little bit, but also to prevent any kind of trike that might slip in and get a foothold. Not to say it's foolproof or anything. It's just one of those things. So
there's so many places where this can go wrong.
Yeah, right. But once you go into that sub, then you let that spawn out. And once you start, letting it get to a certain point with some, you got to control the airflow a little bit. But once you get that down and you start having fruits, then, that's it, man. You grow fruits. Now, the CVG is not the nutrition. It's the grain that's the nutrition. The CVG is just what they call a casing layer, which is just what provides the humidity environment.
So you're taking this like block of grain that's impregnated with the mycelium.
Yep.
And you're taking it into the substrate. Are you just for the dung lovers? Are you burying it in that mixture? Or?
Well, yeah. I use a combination of bag/tent.
Okay, gotcha.
So when I go from my grain to my sub, I go into a bag, and yeah, you just break up your grain real good.
Okay,
because
break it up.
It's going to be like a rock,
right?
So you break that shit up real good, and then you dump that into your sub and mix it all up good.
Okay.
Then seal that off for 2 weeks.
And then if everything went right, it should fruit.
Yeah, in 2 weeks it should have spawned out in that sub, and in somewhere around 10 to 14 days you'll see little pins coming up, which is what you saw there.
Yeah, really cool.
And once you see that, man, that needs to go right to the tent. It needs to be cut open and full FAE right to the tent, and
FAE,
filtered air exchange.
Cool, thank you.
So, and again, it's not sterile. So the filtered part is just you're regulating humidity.
Right.
You're allowing air in without letting humidity out.
Oh.
But mushrooms like this balance of CO2 versus oxygen. And generally it's higher CO2. Mm-hmm. So, in some strains, you need real high CO2. So that filtered air exchange is also controlling how much CO2 you're containing, because cannabis will take CO2 and make oxygen.
Right.
Mushrooms take oxygen and make CO2.
Right.
So as they're making that CO2, you want it to kind of build up in that tent or that bag or your tub or whatever you're growing in, so that it creates somewhat of a high CO2 balance.
So you're just going from sterile contained environment to sterile contained environment to, I'm going to call it a semi-sterile, because I'm sure this tent's very clean.
It has to stay pretty clean. If as soon as you see any kind of contamination, you got to pull it.
So you could go through this process, and this process to get to where you're going in the tent can take
2 to 3 months. Is a run.
Wow, 2 to 3 months, and then you could be 2 weeks away, and something could get in there and just ruin it.
Oh yeah.
So that's why people.
It's happened.
That's why people talk about.
That's why people don't grow it very often. I mean, it's a very frustrating hobby until you get it down, and then even then you can count on about a 5, maybe 10% failure rate.
See, and people have asked me, like, why don't you like get the knowledge? And I'm like, dude, I hear it's really hard, and I'm clean. I wash my hands, but that's lab clean.
You have to be lab clean up until spawning to sub. Literally any spore, any bacteria, literally anything. I've had it to where my little razor blade just touches the side of my petri dish. Contamination. So I use a flow hood. Some people use still air boxes. Still air boxes are cheap. You can either make them or you can buy them on Amazon for like $100. But it's this box where you stick your hands in these gloves and everything inside is contained away from your environment. The other option is a flow hood, which are not cheap, but a flow hood's nice because then you get this massive laminar flow that covers your work area that's 99.999% clean, still leaves that thousandth of an error that still can happen. But that's the option, or go into a full-blown clean room, which that's not going to happen.
Good luck. So Golly gee.
You're
So,
crashing. You went high and then crash.
oh my Lord, there's a lot of information. I'm
Sorry,
learning
man.
a lot of. No, it's
Sorry.
good. This is why I wanted to have
Yeah.
you on.
Mm-hmm.
So so you go all this, you get a successful fruiting body. Now are you out of the woods yet? And is it pretty easy to dry them, or is that a whole nother thing, or is it?
No, I mean, so once you get people, different people pull at different times.
Right.
People say, well, they're stronger if you leave the caps, pull it right before the caps open.
Okay.
Look, dude, if you're growing the mushrooms that at least I've been growing, they're so fucking strong. It doesn't matter if
All
the
right.
caps are open or not, bro.
Well, I've been seeing some stories on Instagram that's just a guy lying awake in bed saying that was not a microdose.
Yeah.
With visuals. I'm like,
The
is
mu-
Oregon rooted okay?
Yeah, the mushrooms today are not like your grandfather's mushrooms. There's mushrooms now like the Enigma line. You can take a gram of that, and that's a fucking macro dose. Okay, I remember back in the day where you had to take 7 grams to have a macro dose.
Right.
You take 7 grams of my shit. Let me rephrase that. Of someone else's stuff.
Right. Someone who's manufacturing these nice new strains.
You're gonna. I hope you're experienced because you're gonna go down a fucking deep rabbit hole.
Right. I had a question about that real quick
yeah.
before we start talking, because
No,
I
it's
want to
fine.
use the right phrase. So, cannabis doesn't have strains, right? They're cultivars, right? Their strain is a misnomer, but with mushrooms, is strain correct? Because it's
no different. It's no different. It's sometimes referred to as a cultigen.
Oh, cultigen. I like that.
Yeah. Sometimes it's referred to as a strain. Sometimes it's referred to all different kinds of ways. It's got the same issue as cannabis.
Right.
Are they really a strain? 2 points. I'm glad you brought this up. There's
Thank
2
you.
points to that. One point is that obviously you might have 5 different strains that are from maybe the same parent line. Like, how many different cookies do we have?
Oh my Lord.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, the argument there is that, is that all different strains? Well, maybe not. But do they all affect you differently?
Different phenotypes.
Okay, but is that a different strain? It's not necessarily a different strain,
Right.
but that different pheno might treat you different.
Right. Correct.
Okay.
So why we clone in the first place?
Well, so that's my point is that, yes, with mushrooms, like say you take the penis envy. Okay, the OG penis envy. This is way back in the 70s or whatever that it was originally kind of cultivated out. I think it was 70s, maybe early 80s, but the original PE, still around, it was called the Homestead PE. And that thing there's probably at least 10 to 15 other strains that stem from that PE.
Right.
There's albinos, there's leucistics, there's tall, small, blue, black. There's so many different varieties that
Right.
had stemmed from that, from selective breeding, from pheno hunting, all that stuff you do with cannabis.
Right.
Now, I will guarantee you that every one of those varieties will treat you different.
right.
But are they from the same parent stock? Yeah, originally it was.
Okay.
So, I mean, there's probably really, like, if you want to talk about a true strain, then it's probably going to be a wild one. A Texas
Okay.
wild, a Georgia wild, an Alabama wild, the Treasure Coast wild from Florida. The
Okay.
original original golden teacher was a wild.
Okay.
Okay, so if you want to get to a real strain, then maybe a wild one would be classified as a strain. But people take wild ones like you would, just like with cannabis.
Right, yeah.
Afghani, Thai.
Yes.
You take these land race strains, wild strains, and then you bring them in and domesticate them into other things.
Right.
Same with mushrooms. So it's the same issue.
Right.
Is it a strain?
Okay. So
But is it a lot different? Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Okay.
So like a sativa.
right.
Really, we have indica and sativa. Well, look how many fucking variations of indica and sativa we have.
To where it almost doesn't matter anymore to a certain degree.
Right. And same with mushrooms. So we have all this strain variety, but it has its lineages back to some base wild strains. Yeah.
And so at what point you're deciding when you're gonna harvest your fruiting body that it took you 3 months of everything.
Yeah.
going
Sometimes
perfect.
people let them grow. Sometimes people pull them early. It's up to you.
So you pull them And then do you dry them?
Yeah, I throw them. So again, and I'm just going to say this right now before I forget, is that this is just my style of growing. There are thousands of ways to grow. This is not the wrong or the right way, just my way.
Totally.
Okay?
Totally.
Just take it for what it is. As far as I do, I put them, my feeling is that air is going to oxidize psilocybin. That's why when you touch a psilocybin mushroom, I can pull off an albino mushroom and it can be completely white. Okay. I pluck it, and even if I'm just barely touching it and try to just clip it off clean and put it away, it's going to blue every place that it's had oxygen touch it.
Okay.
It's going to turn blue. That is psilocybin oxidizing from the air. When it turns blue, that's no longer psychoactive.
Oh.
So when people see the bluing, it's a good indication that there's a lot there, but it's also an indication that you're losing psilocybin because it's bluing.
Okay. I thought that was a measure of just potency. So that's
It
good to
is.
know.
It is a good measure, but the thing is where you're seeing that bluing, you know that it was there, but now it's gone.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So I try to handle them as gently as possible and get them directly in the dehydrator as quick as possible so that they can get as dry as quick as possible so there's the least amount of oxidizing possible.
Okay, so that's what saves them, is dehydrating them as quick as possible.
That's my feeling. I have no scientific evidence.
Okay.
But my feeling is if the less oxidized and the quicker I can get them to a stable form where I can store them, the better off.
Right.
I don't use heat. Make note.
Okay, that was going to be my next question.
And again, there's no proof, but there's a lot of controversy about does heat destroy psilocybin. My thing is, I think that because you can make chocolates and stuff, so I don't think it really. I think a certain amount of heat will fuck it up, like say 200 degrees. But I'm thinking for most cooking, like at 100 to 150 degrees is probably safe, but I still don't go there. I don't use heat to dry. Most dehydrators use heat. Go for it. But I just disconnected mine and said, fuck it. And it takes an extra day or so or two or whatever, but I don't care. I mean, it's quality.
I mean, I know I'm just a cannabis grower, but anytime you're introducing like heat to help dry something, it turns me off just in general, unless you're dealing with like, drying weed in a rainforest or mushrooms in a rainforest. There's no reason to dry them out that quick unless you're, like you said.
Well, and the one thing with cannabis is there is a curing going on. With mushrooms. There is no curing.
So it's done. And
so once you pluck them, they got to get dried and stabilized.
Okay. So it's more of a preservation. It's not like you're trying
preservation.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, because you'd be surprised how fast a mushroom, once it starts decomposing, will either collect mold, fungus, or grow over itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you. You were talking about these wild mushrooms, and are there some? So there are main families that we cultivate, like a lot of these cultivars of mushrooms, strains of mushrooms, whatever you want to call them, that people grow are pretty famous, like Liberty Caps, Texas, whatever, like the stuff that growing up the kids wanted to invite me to go pick off of cow patties, but I wasn't quite brave enough at 16. Probably a good thing. Now I'd probably go. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like stuff like that. Now, some of that stuff has been brought into the cultivation space, but is there stuff that people haven't been able to capture?
There's still people are out there still finding new psychoactive mushrooms.
That's awesome.
There's people that are really into mycology.
Right.
Will take trips to Ecuador and Fiji and Amazon just to look for new species. So I mean, yeah.
Okay.
But we have a fair standard, like Fiji, Ecuador, Texas, Georgia, Florida, Pacific Northwest is Liberty Caps.
Yeah.
Or pancyans. Pinellia cyanescens, those are the most prolific Pacific Northwest kind psychoactive mushrooms, and you can find them all up and down the coast.
Okay.
Azarens, they're everywhere in Oregon.
Okay.
Dude, I was walking, and I'm not going to tell them my secret spot because, but
that's fine.
park. There's a park in town here.
Oh, I bet.
Where the bums hang out.
Yeah.
And they're literally just trampling on these fucking mushrooms, and I'm like, my God,
there are
they don't
people
even
that have
know
edible.
what they're on.
There are people that have like, I'm sorry, I always forget. I'm not from here. Morels. People have morels growing in their backyard. Have no idea.
Yeah.
If you either have the knowledge or you don't. That's what I want to say. My disclaimer is, be careful who you go out into the woods eating mushrooms with, folks. Like this, not you can mess up and it can really hurt you. So please be careful. Like if you're talking like, please be careful. Mushrooms are those poisonous plants. Like one can look, good and be psychedelic and take you on a wonderful trip, and one will make you shit yourself to death in like 5 minutes.
Well, isn't that
but like
no, but isn't that the beauty of mushrooms? Is like they can kill you, save your life, or feed you. I mean,
they are everything.
You can meet God, you could die, or you could just have some good breakfast.
Right? Yeah. And we can cut this question out, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna, so you're pursuing legal status,
Yeah.
as a psilocybe cultivator in Oregon, with the state.
Yeah.
How is that going?
It's interesting to say the least.
Okay.
So, for one, it's just like cannabis. It's so they don't know,
Right.
like they don't know. They don't. They don't know. They don't know. So, like, part of the cultivating part is that I'm also pursuing facilitator licensing.
Right.
So I'll be able to facilitate and provide cultivation services. But even on the facilitator side, it's they don't fucking know. There's no place that's going to hire you yet. The college costs $10,000 to get your facilitator license, and $1,000 a year to have the license.
You hearing this, angel investors?
Yeah. So, it's kind of a big jump for me because I really don't know where I'm going to land. I might end up successful with it, or I might just be broke as fuck with more college loans. I mean,
that's
not on the cultivator side, but on the facilitator side.
Yeah.
Now, on the cultivator side, the only downside to that is they're implementing rules as they're going. This is all cannabis. Remember, this all happened with cannabis.
Yes.
So as we're going, like, I don't even know. At some point, I might have to provide full-on security services if I'm going to be a cultivator. Fuck, I don't want to get into all that. I might have what?
Well, we'll talk about security services later.
Okay. Well, so and then on top of that, they might actually implement a rule where you have to have emergency medical services. On
well, then
staff.
I can't even help you with my drunk bro-vets hanging outside your door.
I'm like, so now I'm not just running a cultivation. I'm running a fucking security service, a cultivation. I have to have EMTs on staff. So it's really getting kind of overwhelming. But the hard part is jumping in and then having these rules implemented as you go.
And then trying to keep up so you can stay afloat.
Or not get fined, as OLCC is so fucking proud of doing, is fining everybody for, not following rules. This is exactly what happened to cannabis. So I'm really freaking scared. But
right.
I thought that they would learn some rules with cannabis. And they did. Like, they've capped the licensing already.
Oh, wow.
But like, it's just they're doing exactly what they did with cannabis.
You're
It's going to be 3 years of trying to keep up with whatever they decide.
So you're a pioneer twice now.
Well, no, I never started a farm or nothing.
Well, fair enough. Yeah. I don't want to say a pioneer. You've taken risks like this as a younger man.
With God, cannabis. I've been black market.
Right.
Yeah.
And then now here you are trying to go legal in a different, I would say a parallel but different space.
Right.
That's got to feel weird. Are you worried about with Oregon's decriminalization of drugs and everything that's been going on? You're not worried about police coming to your door, are you?
No, I don't. Oregon, from what I've seen,
right?
I'm not saying I know it all, but from what I've seen, Oregon is pretty understanding when it comes to people who intend or try to stay within reason within the game, if you will.
Correct.
I think it's these big players that, like these hempers that came in and did what you said. They put these THC plants in.
Right.
People like that, they're going to be busting. But like, if you're in the, to play by the rules the best you can and stuff, I don't,
And they did. They let a lot of people slide on metric for longer years than maybe they should have because the guys were not good at paperwork.
Well, yeah. And so, I mean, I can't fault Oregon because they're very lenient when it comes to the gray areas.
Right, yeah.
But, man, it's just it's scary because I almost feel like just like with cannabis, either I'm going to be a major player or I'm going to be lost in the financial ruins.
Right. And
because look at the big guys. You got places like Focus North and U Green and Benson Arbor and these really successful, great flower, even outdoor flower farms.
Yeah.
But then you got these other guys that just got fucked.
And they were good growers.
Yeah,
and
a lot of craft growers.
Yeah, a lot of craft growers, a lot of good growers, a lot of bad growers too. Not gonna say a lot of that too.
Absolutely.
But there were guys that, for whatever reason, just couldn't scale up. Like there were 99 was the most they were gonna ever be able to run, and it was good. It was better than some of the stuff you could get, but they couldn't make over 99. You can't make money with 99. It's just a different. You know what I mean? The farms got really big, and
well, and that's the thing is, mushroom is at scale, dude. I mean, come on, man. I'm already, I'm a bit scared to run at scale. For one, I've never had a commercially growing mushroom farm. So I've never had true experience at that scale. And so that worries me because, like we've talked about contamination. It's no different than, agriculture. You could have 18 acres full of beautiful plants, but if you don't make harvest,
or if your buddy walks in with a mighty dog and like pets his dog and then starts handling the plants and there's mites on his fingers.
That's what I mean. until those plants are done curing and in a fucking jar or in that store, you could go into financial ruin. You know what I mean? With agriculture. Same with those mushrooms. I could have one bad contamination and it could wipe out the whole fucking lab. Those kind of things make me nervous, but...
this is the dream, right?
Yeah, well, yeah. And I really feel like people need the medicine. Like, dude, I've helped a lot of people just indirectly, just with, things like functional mushrooms and microdosing and stuff.
But before, like, one of the things, like, I was learning to play harmonica. This is a weird story, but I was learning to play harmonica and I could not play like harmonica. I was too nervous. And you look, if you're going to play any kind of music, you have to play really bad music in front of people eventually to learn how to play music better. I think other people have different theories about this. I think you have to embarrass yourself in any kind of performance, even if it's just for family. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to embarrass yourself like for 5 years before you even sound remotely good. Mm-hmm. I think. Maybe
about that, maybe 10.
Well, yeah, I'm a whatever. Like maybe I haven't overinflated, but like, one time I was at a hippie party. I've been playing like harmonic for like 3 years, and this hippie chick, and I always say if you're gonna do psychedelics, any psychedelics, if someone hands you one or whatever, like do not have no in your heart. If no in your heart, pass it back. No one's gonna make you take the magic mushroom. If they're cool, they're not gonna make you take it.
Absolutely.
Like do not take anything you do not want to take. Period. End of story. Okay, everyone got that out of the way. Consent, big thing.
And I want to, on the flip side of that, it's not fucking cool to dose your friends either.
No, it's not. It's not
your friends, not your family, not your hated enemy. You don't fuck around like that. That's bullshit. Anyway,
that's bad juju. Yeah, that's bad stuff. Don't do that. Yeah, that's very important. Don't dose people. Don't
unknowingly. That is.
Yeah. And don't pressure people into. Like, well, people are going to eat candy. They shouldn't sometimes.
Well, I'm not. Let me throw this out there real quick. I literally had someone the other day on my Instagram jokingly telling me that he thought it was hilarious that his friend wanted acid really bad, and he wouldn't let go. They were all going to go to a party. And they were all going to do acid, but his friend was unstable, and so they didn't want him doing acid, but he was going to get it anyway. So what they did is they gave him fake acid, right? And then he still had a bad trip and fucked the party up. And the guy said two things. One, that he was upset that the guy ruined the party. And two, he said that, he was doing his friend a favor by giving him fake acid.
What did he give him?
I don't know.
Oh, gosh.
The bottom line is you don't fuck with people like that. You don't lie about a dose, and you don't give him fake doses thinking you're helping him. That kid ended up having a bad trip in his mind because he was mentally unstable, and they fucked him up worse. And then the kid was laughing about it. Well, I was just trying to save him. And then he goes, well, he ruined the party, and that really pissed me off. And I'm like, he didn't ruin the party, bro. You did.
You could have just had a conversation with your friend.
Yeah, I said you fake dosed him, and that's what ruined the party, bro. Yeah, I was pissed. That's why I'm a little like,
yeah, dude.
You don't fucking fake around.
It's not cool,
dude.
That's not part of you. And we talked about my parents, back home being all old fashioned about drugs. Well, they always tell this fucking story about my dad working at the tool warehouse in Reno, and some guy always joking that he was going to dose him with acid. Well, now my parents think everyone on the West Coast is some crazy wide-eyed hippie dropping acid in people's Dr. Peppers, all right?
Right.
So this has impacts beyond your stupid little fucking party. It has cultural impacts.
Right.
Also, if people don't know they're intoxicated, they don't know not to drive. They don't know what's happening to them, and they can make really poor choices.
Well, absolutely. And the thing is placebo effect is a real thing.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so you're laughing about placebo affecting your fucking friend and then saying he ruined the party. I mean,
so fucked,
dude. That is like that crosses lines, man.
It's not okay.
That is just as bad as giving him the dose and saying that you didn't.
It's like raping someone. You're putting something into someone's body that they didn't give you consent to and they didn't ask for. It's a violation. I mean, it's not rape, but it's violating someone's personal sovereignty, which is one of the main arguments we have as advocates for psychedelics, for cannabis, whatever. Personal sovereignty. Beyond anything else, you are a person and you have the right to make your own decisions. I believe that. Now, everyone's going to disagree on where that right ends and other people's begins, but I think we all can agree that everyone has a sovereign right to experiment with these substances in a safe, as controlled a manner as they can, to their tolerances. I'm also hesitant to do a lot of heavy drug regulations based on like how they've been enforced historically, which is very violently, and for the longest time in this country, the most dangerous thing about most drug use was the consequences with the judges and the courts and societally if you were caught with them, not the dangers of the drugs themselves.
Well, let me just expand on that before you go on. What drugs are illegal? Not the dangerous ones.
Right.
There's not one drug that's dangerous that's illegal. Like
they have medical meth.
Right. But that's not illegal. Now, but you take what's all Schedule 1? It's all the fun drugs.
Yeah.
Seriously. Well, I mean, except for meth and stuff, but
well, is meth Schedule 1? I think it's Schedule 2.
Is it? Oh, it is Schedule 2.
Yeah, it's Schedule 2 because they say that meth has, and it does, for what's it when you fall asleep? Narcoleptics.
Yeah.
That's the one approved use for methamphetamine is narcolepsy.
Okay, but let me be more clear. Let's put it this way. Okay, so
but cannabis doesn't have any medical use. That was my point. So meth is more medical than cannabis bullshit.
Right,
but that's what the government says.
But that's because marijuana is apparently enjoyable by the wrong masses. I mean, that's who they want to. But here's the deal. So let's put it this way. We'll talk about mushrooms. You can go out and a golden teacher that grows wild, if you pick that and it's in your possession, it becomes illegal in most states. And it won't kill you. That golden teacher won't kill you. I don't care if you ate the whole fucking patch. It might fucking send you down a rabbit hole for 12 hours, but you will not die. Now, unless you
run off something. Or,
well, that's what I mean. Yeah. Unless you're down that rabbit hole alone and you're in the woods, unsafe manner. But I mean, but that's illegal. But you take an Amanita, a Panthera, which is deadly.
Yeah.
And you can pick that and find it just as, if not easier, than a golden teacher. And it's not illegal. But it will kill you deader than shit.
And you can kill anyone with it.
Right.
Except to eat it.
So it's not illegal. Deadly mushroom, all over the coast, not illegal. But that little golden teacher, you pick it, and it's psychedelic, and it's illegal.
And one, it might just be a pleasant afternoon. And that's what I talk about. So I'm at this party, right? And this wonderful hippie chick hands me a mushroom. And I'm like, she's like, you want this? I'm like, yeah, I know, I've heard you've been thinking about trying them. And I'm like, not the whole thing. Let me take half. And I literally broke the mushroom in half, handed her back the cap, and ate a stem the size of the end of my pinky, but really small and dried. About 30 minutes later, I was connected. I wasn't tripping, but me and this guy played a few musics. He played a little blues on the piano, and I was just locked in with the harmonica, and I was just playing. I was sounding great. Everything was great for an hour. Everything was great, and then I kind of cooled out, and that's all it can be. It does not have to be. And then from that, I was able to get over some of my stage anxiety, and now here I am on a podcast and on the radio and all that. So you don't have to eat an ounce climb a tree in a rainstorm and like go to heaven and hell or whatever to experience some beautiful breakthrough experience. You can eat a very small amount and have a nice afternoon and still learn something about yourself and
well,
progress.
For the most part, that's actually more medicinal for people. The problem is that when you start doing microdoses on average, like you're actually doing programs, the thing is mushrooms start making you look at yourself.
Right.
And if you do enough microdosing, you'll see this, but they tend to make you self-reflectory. The problem, not that this is not a problem. I think it's great because it allows you to step back out of your ego and find the things that are fucking with you. But the downside is that people call those bad trips. The people that sit in the corner crying because they had a fucked up life and they haven't ever addressed it, that kind of shit starts bubbling up sometimes. And that's where those hard times can come in with mushrooms.
I find that stuff sometimes helpful.
I find it really helpful. Mushrooms only make you look in the mirror. A lot of people don't like doing that.
Yeah. Well, we could talk about mirrors. So when I've taken maybe more than a medicinal dose
I
of
meant that not
literally.
Yeah,
totally. I was like, well, maybe you don't look in mirrors.
No, I know that. But I meant figuratively.
But I tell you, look in the mirror, you're assessing
yourself.
And a lot of times it can get rid of some really rough blind spots, and you can realize you're fucking up.
Yeah,
and it can send you into like you said, it can send you into a tailspin. But sometimes, like I've had some psychedelic trips that I would consider were less positives on what I found out later wasn't acid, but might have been research chemicals. We're still learning about drugs, but I had a really horrible, like nightmarish, like bad experience, but I came out of the other side of it more equipped to face my current circumstances in a weird way. Like it was definitively an unenjoyable time. I don't recommend taking the blotter paper that the guy says has acid on it. And I'm describing these trips to experience like older psychedelics, and they're like, oh yeah, that's acid. And then they're like, no, that's not, that part's not right. Like melting into things, and then, complete breakthrough weird. Like, so also when you're taking drugs in this semi-legal environment, please try to find people that you can at least somewhat trust.
Well, I mean, set and setting, man.
Yeah. And that's important. Yeah. And I wouldn't recommend taking powerful psychedelics alone.
Well, no, a trip sitter, man.
Yeah.
Like, these are all things that's why I'm glad we're at where we're at, is because these are the things that need to be available and addressed.
Well, and it's common. I think it's more common knowledge now, at least among, certain people of a certain age, that like if you're going to do certain drugs, you need to not be alone. But I think,
but you also want it to be a safe feeling. So it's not just not about being alone. You want to be with someone that you feel comfortable and safe with, because mushrooms, especially on bigger doses, will make you very so much self-aware that you become like hyper. Like, you ever walk into a big room with a lot of people and you feel like really kind of like small and people, you know what I mean?
Like everyone is observing you.
Yeah, you start to feel that way with high doses of mushrooms, and that can be a little overwhelming too.
I kind of liked that feeling the first time I felt it, but
it's just your senses become so hyper aware.
Yes.
Things become bright and clear, and you can hear better, and everything's hyper, and so all of a sudden that space and people become like.
Yeah, and I think that would be a problem if you were taking too high a dose and you weren't experienced with it. And that's why a lot of people are saying like, oh, psychedelics are like good, stuff for PTSD. Well, yes, but like, please dip a toe in.
Oh yeah.
Like I would always say dip a toe in. Like I think part of the reasons why I like mushrooms is because I didn't eat a really like a macro dose where I like was staring at my muscles through the skin of my feet for a while until I had taken like several very small doses. I worked my way up and I've done the peeking through the woods, climbing rocks and stuff too, but I worked my way up to that. And I think everyone should read books. And there's different books for different people. Go online, look. Terence McKenna wrote a really good book. I read that. And I honestly didn't understand all of it. But it helped me see what a psychedelically opened mind might write. And how that's different from what I in a sober might write. And understand in a soft way how this might affect me if I went down this road hard. And Terence McKenna still seemed kind of cool. So, but... we're talking levels here. I'm no Terence McKenna. Yeah, I'm just a guy that every once in a while, every 6 months likes to reset from mushrooms. That's it.
We're gonna have to get you on some microdose programs. And
So before that,
we talk too much here.
no, I want to ask you one more question though. So we've been talking a lot about first times and stuff. How old were you when your journey with psychedelic mushrooms started?
Oh shit, dude! I was. When did I take my first eighth?
Oh, an eighth. Okay.
Yeah, I never ever took anything less than an eighth.
Okay.
I've never. Well, no. Recently, I've been fooling with microdosing, but
okay.
But I got a lot of black market mushrooms when I was young. You know, shit that was just like I said. It took 7 grams to get a macro on. But most of my early days was like 3 to 5 grams. And
okay.
I started out just taking eighths for fun, and you know what happened is the first couple of times were bad trips just because I did it in the wrong setting. I was doing it like the one time I did it, it was my first marriage, and
those first marriages.
Oh, she passed.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. That's even worse, man.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Oh man, I was in the Army.
That's all good. Yeah, right. No, but she didn't know I was doing them, and I did them. It was like one of my first times, and she was coming home after work, and so I had a bad trip just because.
Not a good spot.
Dude, you know, I'm like hiding it from people and thinking that you know, it's not like cannabis, man.
You can't hide it.
No. And so
you're gonna be weird.
So I tripped myself out, but then one night I got 7 grams, and I decided, because I was in a good space and everything, that I was going to do it. And I don't know why I did it. And I took all 7 fucking grams, and I'm sitting in my car out front from my house.
Oh my gosh.
And there was these, of course, everything weird happens when you're on mushrooms. So I'm sitting in my car, and this pack of wild dogs in the middle of Medford come running down the street, right? Like out of the blue. Never seen a pack of wild dogs in Medford. But on mushrooms, here I am watching this pack of dogs, and as they're going by, they're kind of starting to morph into these like more like bigger wolf.
Oh fuck!
And so at that point, I'm like, okay, I need to go inside. So I went inside and I laid down on the floor, and dude, I had the most amazing 4 hours of my life. I tripped so hard, and it was just, I had some breakthroughs, and then from then on, dude, I just at that point was every like 6 months to a year I'd do it, but then I backed off, and I had substance issues with alcohol for many years. And so actually, I gotta say, in all honesty, that using mushrooms, both microdosing and macrodosing, has really helped me basically eliminate that issue from my life.
Good. I'm glad to hear it, man. That's awesome.
And I'm proud. I'm not proud of it. I'm happy about it, because addiction is a terrible place to be. Terrible place to be.
Yeah. I drank a lot when I was younger.
Did you?
Oh yeah. And it was one of those things. It was making me sick. I had to stop. It was making me like.
Well, it's good you did.
Yeah. And honestly, like, it's harder to like. I think, with alcohol, and I know it's hard to be yourself when you're drinking all the time, I feel like. You know what I mean?
You can't be yourself. Well, and you cross certain lines where you drink chronically enough and you do become someone different.
Right, yeah. And so it, like, I don't know, when I quit drinking, especially quit drinking heavily, like I'd have half a beer and a J, and I'd be like crossfaded, the light stuff. But heavy drinking, I had stopped completely, and I think I changed a lot. Much less like aggression, like much less like lashing out, for sure.
Well, I noticed, like, with both cannabis and mushrooms, your tolerance is a thing, man. You can only smoke so much fucking weed, dude.
Right.
But you can get ripped and not go out and destroy your life or destroy another family's life.
Right.
And same with mushrooms. You can't just fucking take a macro dose every day. You take an eighth today and trip. I guarantee tomorrow you can't take an eighth and feel shit.
Well, and when I do big doses, I'm so tired the next day.
Oh, yeah, dude.
Why would you want to again? Like, no, now we're relaxing and we're drinking water.
Now it's water and video games, or music.
Something.
But yeah, I mean, it's like they're self-regulating drugs, and it's nothing like alcohol.
So I feel like we've had a really good conversation.
I'm so sorry about the length, bro.
No, I like it. See,
Awesome.
I break these into 2, and that's how we go.
Part 1, part 2.
Yeah. So Where can the people check you out? I know you got a podcast.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I just want to plug, because we're back now again. So two things. One, so we're all on all platforms, back on Apple too. So I'm really happy about that. Yeah, Stitcher and all that. So all your platforms are back on, so you can find us out there. But if you prefer a website, OregonRooted541.com is back up.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's where you can find all of our episodes, no matter what, all the time, because it'll be the one thing that works. Sometimes Apple's iffy, sometimes other platforms are iffy. But
yes,
that's up. Also, OregonRooted.com is coming back. Not yet, but that's where I'm going to have everything. I'm going to have links to the podcast, but I'm going to start selling genetics.
Okay, cool.
All my genetics, all the spores. Obviously, no fruits.
Okay.
Just genetics and spores. All right, cool. And seeds. I'm going to have some seeds up.
Okay,
just
cool.
all that kind of stuff on Oregon
Nice.
Rooted. But that's it. IG. Everything is updated through IG. We do have Facebook and Instagram. It's all on Oregon Rooted under that. But mostly IG is where we keep the updates coming.
Okay.
So, all right.
Thank you so much for
Thanks,
coming
brother.
on. All right, let's overgrow the world.
That's right, baby.
You can reach me, Uncle Dig, on Instagram at Uncle Dig. The bumper music on this podcast was produced by Chad DeVilliers on ukulele. He can be followed on YouTube at Ukuleles Are Stupid or on Instagram at Chadwick Enterprises. Thank you for listening to the Bagseed Chronicles.